Hey friends, okay, so this is a pretty short 15-minute tutorial on how to get into Shirshasana or headstand, one of my absolutely favorite poses. So a couple of y'all have been reaching out wanting to learn the breakdown of some pretty big postures, and so I thought, what the heck, let's start to put some of these tutorials together. So the first one we've got today is headstand. And before we move into it, there's a couple of things I want to cover with you, and that is, number one, it is just a pose. So whether or not it happens today in this moment does not mean anything, okay? So just make sure you grant yourself some patience and some grace, and just remember to give the pose a lot of space and a lot of breath, okay? So no rush, everyone's journey is a little bit different, so just bear that in mind. And then the second thing that is super duper important is please make sure that you're warmed up. If you haven't practiced yoga today, I'd highly suggest that you press pause and go find yourself a quick class, just because this does require some moving parts, so make sure that you are warmed up and ready to rock and roll. Okay, so if you're warmed up and you're good to go, let's get started. So this tutorial is for those of you that are wanting to move away from the wall. If you're still using the wall for Shirshasana, you by all means can take your mat and move it up against a wall and do everything that we're covering today with the support of the wall behind you. Today, for the purpose of this style of tutorial, we won't be using the wall. We're now working into moving away from the wall and trying to access this posture on our own without that support. But just bear that in mind. If you need it, go get it. Okay, yogis. So let's find out what the crown of the head is. We always hear bring the crown of your head down, but it's like, what's the crown? So to figure out what the crown of your head is, you're going to take your thumb and your index fingers. You have this little L shape, and you are just going to place the thumb right at the third eye point or the unibrow point of the eyebrow crest, and then take your index finger, your shooter finger, and just stretch it out across the top of your skull. You don't want to hyper stretch it or over stretch it, just a little reach. And then where that index finger lands is usually what we call the crown of the head. For most people, it's about an inch or so above the hairline. So that's the part of your head that you want to actually have touching the mat. A lot of times, especially when I was first starting and I was obsessed with learning how to get into this posture, I would just rub the top of my head so I knew where I wanted to make contact. I had that physical sensation of where I wanted to make contact with my skull. Okay, now Shirshasana requires three different things, mostly. I mean, it requires your whole body and definitely your breath, but it also requires pretty strong shoulders, a decent core, because I'm not going to say mine's super strong, but a decent core, and then open hamstrings, okay, or more flexible hamstrings. So the first way we're going to set this up is called the bird's nest technique. So this is where we interlace the fingers and just create a little garage, if you will, for your head. Now, at no point is my head actually on my hands or my fingers. This is simply acting as a barricade to wrap around my skull, just in case I happen to topple over. I'll topple over onto my hands or fingers first, and then onto the ground. Now, bear in mind, there is falling with this posture. When I first started, I fell all the time. So if you're a little afraid of falling, which is completely normal, grab some pillows, throw them towards the top of your mat. So if you do happen to come down, you're gonna hit those pillows first. They'll help cushion the fall. But in yoga, as you know, we definitely are well aware of how gravity works. So I think most of us are pretty comfortable with falling. But let's set up our bird's nest. So you're gonna take your bird's nest and then bring your arms down to the ground. So I've got my fingers interlaced, my arms are down, I'm on my knees. Now, if you can see here, this is me just completely relaxed. So I'm not using my arms at all. I'm just kind of heavy. My weight is pouring down into my chest. Now, what I want to do is actually utilize the forearms by pushing them down into the ground. So you notice how much more I'm engaged there. So not engaged, engaged. By pushing the forearms down, I can then start to walk my knees in and then begin to place my skull onto the ground. Again, my hands are just wrapped around the top part of my skull. And again, not engaged, engaged. And you can feel that weight in your head. You can feel how much more pressure comes to the skull when we're not using the upper body. And then how much pressure we're able to relieve the head and the neck. We'll start to walk the knees in as closely as you can. And then this is where your core really starts to turn on a bit. So I am driving my navel up to my spine. And I'm trying to use my belly a bit. I'm going to tuck my toes and then come up into downward dog. Now for a lot of you, this is where you may be for quite a while, maybe even years or months. It's normal. If you're really tight, you might notice that your knees bent. Again, very normal. I'm still pushing my forearms into the ground, staying really active through the upper body. And I'm just trying to get my feet in to where I start to feel my hips stacking over my shoulders. Now once I've got a good range, like my feet just won't come in anymore, I'm going to pull one knee into my chest, right? So let's just say my hamstrings are tight, they're not very open, knees are bent. I just want to work on pulling one knee in at a time. Now, the more I start to do that, the more I start to lean into this posture. You see that? So this becomes less like strength and more physics, okay? Because I'm just stacking my bones sufficiently enough that I start to balance. Perfect, come on down. So it's a great way to start. I call it the seed pod variation. For those of you who tend to have really tight hamstrings or your hamstrings just aren't very flexible or open, keeping the knees bent like that allows you to stack your hips over your shoulders without the extended leg, in which case once you're there you can work on lifting or extending the legs up to the sky. So it would look a little something like this. Again, I'm always pushing my arms down into the earth. I'm going to find that seed pod position, both knees in, and then on the inhale, I'm going to start to lift up. Big breath in. Now, once you're lifted, that's where things get kind of scary, because you're like, whoa. So you want to make sure you're either pointing through your feet or flexed. Okay, so just imagine that the ground now, we're at your feet, and then use that exhale to come back the way you came, where it might not be a super graceful exit. That's okay. It's fine. We all start somewhere. Trust me. I wish I could scrounge up some old videos of me learning headstand. So that's the first way to get into this posture, is the seed pod shape. Now, at no time ever do you want to jump into this pose. And if you've ever taken a live class with me, you know I will go get you. So no jumping into this posture. The reason why you don't want to jump into a posture like this is because you're balancing on your head and your neck, which are kind of important. So when you jump into it, sometimes you can overestimate the lift and tend to take yourself backwards, in which case you get the wind knocked out of you pretty quick, or you tend to be a little frightened and not jump as high. So the seed pod variation is a great way to start to access what we call stacking of the bones. When bones are stacked appropriately, a lot of this becomes less a matter of flexibility and strength, more a matter of physics and breath, okay? Now, the next variation or option is the leg lift. Now, this one does require a more flexible hamstring. So for those of you who are pretty flexy, this might be your go-to variation. So I'm going to set up everything the same way. Interlacing the fingers, forearms are down, tail is stacked over those knees, and I want to push the ground away. And I'm always pushing the ground away. I'm going to nestle my head against my hands like a barricade, walk my knees in. Once I feel set up, lift into essentially a down dog, and then one leg lifts. Now notice I have a pretty good range in my hamstrings, but once that left leg is stacked, it almost pulls my right leg up off the ground. Now as both legs float up, again, point or flex, navel to spine, relax your jaw, And then see if you can come back down right as gracefully as you came up. Again, that's always a nice ambition, but not necessary. Okay, so those are two of my favorite ways of learning how to get into this posture. If you are still in a place where you are using the jump up or the kick up a little bit, do it at a wall. Do not do it without a wall, because you just risk falling over a little bit too aggressively. And in yoga, a big part of learning these postures is learning how to fall safely. All right, one more variation before I let you go is going to be the tripod. Okay? It works the same way, only it uses a little bit more upper body. It's not my personal favorite just because I tend to be a little bit more weak in my upper body. But I'm going to place my hands down. I'm going to bring, again, the crown of my head to the earth and start to walk the feet up. Now, same thing pertains here, where you're tucking the knees in, either seat pod shape, or you're extending one leg up at a time. You might see how much more of my upper body I'm using, the having to push the earth quite forcibly with my hands, really using those triceps, maybe a little shaky, and then coming back down to earth. Now that tripod setup is very similar to a push-up, right? So wrists are underneath the shoulders, and as you come down, the crown of the head comes down and elbows stay squeezed in. We want to resist splaying the elbows out, because in that situation, we have taken up too much surface area and now we're unstable. So you want to really close things in, make it tight and clean. All right, yogis, so that is Shirshasana. Have fun with it. Remember, don't take it too seriously. It's just a pose. And at the end of the day, it doesn't mean a whole lot other than you can get on your head. So once you start to get the hang of it, start to pay attention to the breath a little bit more if you can, and notice what starts to happen as you become more observant of the inhale and the exhale in that posture. It really, really can be quite a beautiful experience and super meditative. Well, I hope you enjoy. I will definitely keep working on these and get more posted up. Next one working on is Vajramitrasana, so that should be kind of fun. But yeah, I will keep working on these for you guys. Shoot me suggestions on DM, email, text me if you have my number, and let me know, and I'm totally happy to help you guys learn how to do some neat stuff. I love you all. I hope you're staying well and safe, and yeah, have a great week, guys.